Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Surah Ibraheem, chapter 14, verses 30 to 34 will be covered today. And these are the references, and this is our contact in case of any question or query. Recap so far. Everything in the universe follows Allah's laws, and the darknesses which exist in the human world can be removed by using the light of the Quran. And these are the darknesses to which Quran has referred at numerous places and which are related to human psyche. We need, of course, to first recognize and understand these darknesses, the human psyche. The life of the hereafter exists as a fact, and denial of it will not cause it to disappear. Therefore, in order to get the best from this life, mankind needs to reflect on the signs all around it to look for a higher purpose of their existence on a planet Earth. We know Quran has drawn our attention to the outer world, the physical world, and then it asks us to question our own very existence and then look at the higher purpose of life, which includes the life of the hereafter, ourselves, and Allah as a model. By virtue of possessing choice and intent, mankind requires the external guidance of the Quran in order that all those latent potentials can emerge which are kept there to benefit from this life and the life of the hereafter. Next is what is in the Quranic guidance can be verified through historical evidences. For example, the account of Bani Israel and their struggle with the regime of Pharaoh. The account of Bani Israel is frequently mentioned in the Quran. The reason was that Arabs at that time were well familiar with some parts of the story or the account of Bani Israel. There is nothing in the Quran which the human intellect cannot comprehend, since it is for mankind for all times. The messengers who brought Allah's revelation were themselves human beings, and together with their companions, they followed the permanent values and managed to reap the benefits as noted in the Quran. Human desires and intellect, which are devoid of the light of the Wahi of Allah, are equivalent to Iblis plus Shaitan, and cannot create a world free from fear and huzn. And we have gone over it a number of times, and Quran has referred to this aspect in order to draw our attention to our own inner psyche and the psyche of other human beings. The complete ideology, which is, for example, noted in one of the verses in Surah Anam, وَتَمَّتْ كَالِمَاتُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا, given in the Quran, has the potential and ability to grow, develop, flourish, and bear fruit for the whole of mankind. The Quran has said that this is the book which has complete guidance for mankind for all times. In order to accelerate its pace, if human hands join this effort, then deen based on this ideology can materialize on a human time scale. Leaders and nations who follow the evil ideology of life ultimately take their populations towards destruction through their own deeds. This is as per the law of requital of Allah. Now let us go to the first verse of our presentation today, 1430. Study the psyche of the man-devised system. وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا لِيُضِلُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ قُلْ تَمَتَّعُوا فَإِنَّ مَصِيرَكُمْ إِلَى النَّارِ. What they did was that they continued to take the name of the laws of Allah, but declared non-divine laws as their equivalent, so that by diverting people from the path proposed by Allah, they put people on the other path. Say to these people that you have also adopted this path, so that for a short period of time you can draw benefits from this. After that, there is destruction and ruin for you too. Now, to understand any system, we need to comprehend the psyche behind it. Some reflections on this verse. First is half-hearted attempts in life do not lead us to our intended destinations. In order to obtain optimum results from our exertions, we need to think, plan, and organize resources, and then execute these with our full focus and resoluteness. This is what we need to do even under man-devised systems. Because we got intellect and we can think about through the problem. So a problem has to be understood first, and then we have to plan and then carry out some actions to resolve the issue. The Quran draws our attention to remaining firmly on our conviction, called Eimaan, and then to continue our efforts in the direction of the system of Rabubiyat in the world. keep one aim before our eyes, that all the injustice we witness in this world is not going to disappear unless we have the system of Rabubiyat in the world. The Quran has reiterated this point of not associating others with Allah, which we need to comprehend at a fundamental level in relation to our psyche. That is, if we are associating someone else with Allah and Allah becomes a sort of a contaminated model for ourselves, then of course our self will not develop the way it is meant to develop. So that is the point over here, and Quran has referred to this point again and again. By virtue of possessing a self, we need a higher self as a model to bring out its latent potentials. So we need to keep reminding ourselves that I've got far more potentials than the potentials which I'm displaying at this point in time. And that way we keep making effort. Because life is about making efforts. The day we stop making efforts, that means we are literally dead. This is the way our creation is meant to be, and we need to come to grips with this issue by exerting all our cognitive potentials. Otherwise, we will fail to understand the state of our own self. And a self which does not understand its own state of development cannot be of much use to the system of Allah. We have gone through these points previously as well, but it is good to remind ourselves we need to understand where we are vis-a-vis our own self development. And we can check it through the value system of the Quran. By stating tamattahu, for example, those means of sustenance which are sufficient for a journey in the verse, the Quran has addressed ourselves by dissociating it from our physical existence and its needs and has made the reality clear. I.e., if we remain focused only on the needs of the physical side of ourself, then there is nothing in ourself which has the ability to go forward. So we have to have a balance in our life. While the means of sustenance of the physical self, individually as well as collective, are very important, but at the same time, we have to keep our focus on human self, that is nafs, so that we understand that body is there to help us to develop ourselves, because body has a finite time in this world, whereas self is eternal. Stages of the self's development, vertical ascent. Over here, I will share a slide with you, and I'm quite happy to take any comments, criticism, because this issue has been facing me for some time, that where exactly human beings go wrong and do not question their own existence, their own self, and the issues around them. Birth as a child, a biological process just like animals. We see a child being born just like an animal as to other animals, and the child comes into this life. However, each child has an I, that is, it has a potentials to become something else and has latent potentials to create a self with a new life based on Iman. These very potentials, when developed, take to lofty heights in this earthly life. I've quoted a verse here, 23:14. We can have another look on that, where Quran says that at a stage in the development of a child, then suddenly he becomes something different from an animal. And it is by virtue of possessing an I, that divine energy which gives us choice and intent. Next slide is a child who is born equal to any other child in the world, grows in an environment which is not of his creation. He or she is at the mercy of this environment and is influenced by parental belief systems, values of the parents and the society, education and peers, national identity, religious identity, gender, status, and wealth of parents. So this is important, that at a fundamental level, when a child is born, it is not aware of anything. He only learns it once he grows up and he's able to use his choice and intent. So at a fundamental level, this reality, we should keep it in mind as students of the Quran. Some means are required to fulfill physical needs. Now it is in reference to that child. For example, skills, monetary support, education, training, cope with disabilities, etc. Man learns to use his choice as permitted by his environment. If there is a restricted environment, economically deprived environment, then those human beings will have less choice. Poor children have limited choice. Religious beliefs impose unseen chains and hamper efforts. So we have to be very aware of these things when on our journey towards the Quran. Since we are already on this path of the Quran, we should look back and observe and see how the other human beings are being treated and how they are being brought up. The absence of a system of deen is a gross injustice to all these new arrivals in the world. We cannot do anything what has happened in the past, but looking at the future, we have to come to grips conceptually, at least, with these issues as students of the Quran. Most children in a man-devised system do not even get these opportunities which well-off parents can provide. The lottery of the place of birth plays its role. Girls suffer even more as they are ruled by men. Those who somehow get out of this choice do not consider doing anything to reduce the injustices of the system, rather become part of it and start to support it. Hence, it continues on. Now, this is a question which we should be asking. Why do we conform with the majority or conform to the value system in which we are born? It is because we are too much focused on the physical side and not questioning our own existence. We see the problems around us and we think that this is how the world is meant to be. And that is the folly, that is the mistake we make. And somebody has to draw our attention to this. Most accept the state of the world as fait accompli, that this is going to be like this, so what can I do? And we get on with our life and think this is how this life is meant to be, and think it is meant to be like this. Those who do think cannot figure out how to change it and get bogged down in the daily struggles of life. So while we are bogged down in the daily struggles of life, we have to think outside the box as well. And that is the important point for us. And it's an uphill task. It's not an easy task, and Quran recognizes it. Self-preservation prevents any violent action. The rich and powerful in the world gradually control the world's resources and poverty increases. And if you look at the Quran at the initial stages, till a system is established, Quran does not ask us to resort to violence. What it wants is to develop ourselves, keep developing ourselves, be patient, keep observing, keep multiplying keep bringing out our best, our potentials into the world, which is, of course, man-devised. Children continue to be born and die without any achievement. And when I say achievement over here, it is the achievement even from those successes which are defined by the man-devised system, not even as physical beings. The question for us is it meant to be like this? Does the Quran require us to accept the status quo? Now, this is a stage where then, if we are looking for guidance, we go to the next stage of our life. And that is, some people of exceptional outlook question this word. So those who have come to the Quran, we should accept it. We should be, in fact, happy that we had an exceptional outlook. We questioned our own existence. We questioned the system around us. And we came to the Quran because we were looking for guidance. And it set up and seek an alternative. This is where the Quran assists those who look beyond the man-devised systems. They think rationally and extremely rationally, persistently question the condition of the world, reflect in the Quran continuously, and reject the man-devised system conceptually through their own conclusions. It is not the conclusions of others which help us. As we have previously, it has been pointed out that Quran understood by others is of no use to me as an individual. I have to understand it myself. After having acquired Iman, they strive for the system of deen together. We need to study the Quran with this kind of a self. So this is the self which will help us to understand the Quran and then work towards the system of deen. The world around us is the product of the human intellect. Can human intellect create a better world than this? So this is these are the slides. Of course, there could be more slides we could add in between and discuss it as well. But basically, what we know from the world around us and having come to the Quran, that there is a lot to do with our self-development so that we understand the world the way Quran wants us to look at it and understand it. Now, one verse sums up the wrong choices made by people. Now, this is a verse from Surah Al-An'am. وَذَرِ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَذَكِّرْ بِهِ أَن تُبْصِرَ نَفْسٌ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ لَيْسَ لَهَا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلِيٌّ وَلَا شَفِيعٌ وَإِن تَعْدِلْ كُلَّ عَدْلٍ لَا يُؤْخَذْ مِنْهَا أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ أُبْصِرُوا بِمَا كَسَبُوا لَهُمْ شَرَابٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ وَعَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْفُرُونَ. A lot covered in this verse, that the outlook of those people who are lost by only the physical existence of theirs, then of course they are in trouble because they haven't understood the purpose of their life. The state of those people whose condition is such that, leaving aside the system of Allah, they do not even give any importance to that code and constitution that is their own deen, the deen which they have themselves created. And we can see it around that people, the countries who have created their own constitutions, and they are going against it. Why do they go against it? Because wherever it does not suit them, they go against their own value system. And the Quran is pointing to that right here, which they have adopted for themselves, because this is an extreme weakness of human beings, that if they have devised certain values themselves, at least they should stick to that. And if they don't stick to that, that means their self is really of a very low order, and take human life as being merely play and amusement, because they are not taking the life very seriously. Never mind the values of the Quran, even the values they have created themselves, like UN has created, they have joined together and they have created certain values, which is called UN Charter. And we have gone through it previously, that they are going against those values themselves because they take life not very seriously. They think that we are here just to pass time and pursue the conveniences of this life, and the life will end with death, and remain in this delusion that the purpose of life is merely luxury and lust, and that's it. The Quran has beautifully summed it up in one verse. Do not waste your efforts on such people. So this is an instruction for us, that do not waste your efforts on such people. Leave them in the state they are in, because if we get involved in that, then we get distracted, and then we will leave the Quran and then keep doing what they are doing. However, do keep presenting the teaching of the Quran to them, because that is how our self develops. Of course, we are warning them as well, but our self will also develop, and we will understand that why are we telling them not to do what they are doing. That is why Quran says, forbid evil and promote good. This is because an individual should not be deprived of the Quran because of their wrong deeds. Though it is another matter that no one can save him from the outcomes of his wrong deeds except the law of Allah. And this is the bottom line, that nobody can save us from the effects of the law of requital, which are getting imprinted on our own self. For this, they can have no friend and helper, nor intercessor, nor can he avoid the consequences by offering something in return. The Quran has made it very clear right at the outset, right at the fundamental level, that each one of us is accountable for his own deeds, for his own thoughts. These people have been handed over into the hands of their deeds. Very beautifully worded here. These people have been handed over into the hands of their deeds. So they are not in control of their deeds. It's just their deeds who are controlling them. And this is a fact, that our mind, our intellect then takes over everything what we have. The I becomes suspended in a way because we hand it over to our desires, our emotions and intellect, so that they can suffer the punishment of whatever they have done. They become deprived of the bounties of life, even those things which in ordinary circumstances are the cause for human nourishment, become causes of bitterness of life and heartaches for them. I didn't look at it that way, this lahum shrabun min hamimin wa azabun alim, that even in this world, people who are enjoying the conveniences, they are still not enjoying the life the way it is meant to be. Of course, their physical needs are met, but are they absolutely sure about their path of life? About what are they going to do with death? The fear of death always remains at the back of their mind. And then the fear and grief, which is spread, which is everywhere in the world. How do you cope with that? This is because they refused to tread on the correct path and rebelled against haqq and righteousness. It is because of bima kanu yakfurun, because the true purpose of their life is not in front of them, and because of this kufr, they live a very unhappy life despite enjoying the conveniences of life. 1431, the next verse, Rabubiyat needs to be approached in phases. In opposition to them, say to these servants of mine who have Eimaan in the truth of my laws, that they should not be apprehensive of the fact that the system of batil is imposed everywhere, thus how to extricate from it. And Quran gives the formula for that. It says, establish the system of Salat, and whatever we have bestowed on them, whether these are their latent potentials or physical means of sustenance, they should keep expanding these according to need and opportunity, openly and secretly for this lofty objective. Now is the opportunity for this. If this time slips away, then it will become difficult, because this is not that thing which we can purchase whenever we wish from the bazaar, or that can be requested from a friend as a favor. This is achieved during the window of opportunity through exertion and sacrifice. I forgot to recite the verse. Kulle ibadi allazina amanu yuqimus salata wa yunfiqu mimma razaqnahum sirran walaniyatan min qable an yatiya yawmulla bayun fihi wala khilalun. Over here, interesting is, which I have highlighted, ibadi allazina amanu. That Quran, Allah has said that my servants, those who are following my path, and what is their mark of distinction? That they have got Iman. And once they have got Iman, as a consequence of that, they look for establishing the system of Salat. And this system of Salat will start with Yunfiku mimma razaqnahum sirran wa alaniyatan. More on this, some related verses on making rizq available. The first verse I have quoted over here, I thought is very instructive. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu anfiqu mimma razaqnakum min qabli an yatiya yawmulla bayun fihi wala khullatun wala shafaatun wal kafiruna humus zalimun. O Jamaat Mu'mineen, the reason for quoting the accounts of previous Anbiya and nations is so that you know that the secret of achieving the bounties of life is in the establishment of the system of Allah. This is in continuation from the previous verses. It is essential for this that whatever Allah has bestowed on you, keep it available for this purpose. Presently, you are in a position to do so. That is, whatever is available to you, and you are in a pursuit of establishing a system of deen, hence you should look into it seriously. But if this time passes away, then it will not be possible to acquire these bounties, that is worldly and the hereafter, because this is not that entity which you could buy whenever you wish, nor can this be acquired from a friend, nor through an intercession. Very powerful statement and based on fact. Allazina yunfikuna amwalahum fi sabilillahi summa la yutbi'una ma anfaqu mannam wala azan. Lahum ajruhum inda rabbihim wala khawfun alayhim wala hum yahzanun. So important thing over here is that this is how khawf and huzn will disappear. If we follow this path, which the Quran is putting before us, then ultimately this khawf and huzn will disappear, because we will also understand why this khawf and huzn is there in the first place. Those people who keep their earnings available for the establishment of the system of Allah, which is guarantor of the welfare and good of mankind. And after that, they do not even think that they have done any favor on anyone. Very important, this point over here is that if we think, because we are working for the system of deen and we want to acquire that developed self which will be able to establish the system of deen, of course, after understanding it. So part of that understanding is that our psyche should not even think of doing any favor to anyone, because the question is not of doing any favor, because we got a wrong system around us. We should not be in possession of the extra stuff or extra conveniences in our possession. In the first place, if there was a system of deen, all these burdens we wouldn't be carrying in the first place. Nor do they become a burden on anyone due to this. These are those people whose reward for their efforts and sacrifices becomes available in the shape of that system in which they do not have any fear from an external threat, nor any anxiety and stress due to internal conflict or need. Now let us look at some of these points. It is about becoming Allah's companions. Note the change in the tone of the Quran. Tell those who have opted to become La Ibadi Allazina Aman. It is a great favor or a blessing from Allah that once we are in this path, we become Ibadi, His abads, His servants. What should they do? And the Quran says in another verse, Ya Ibadi Allazina Amanu Inna Ardi Wasiatun Fa'iya Fabudun. And the Quran over there says in 29:56 that those who have elected to follow this path and have acquired Iman, remember, if you cannot do it in one piece of land, then you should move away. Go to a land where you can establish deen, or deen is already in place. Because bottom line is you should aim, you should strive to follow Allah's laws. Because those potentials which are related to the system of deen, you will not be able to bring them out unless there is a collective system on ground. Of course, we can understand them. But practically, to bring best out of us, we have to have a system called deen. this is the state we Muslims have done to the word by doing shirk with the Quran. Not one place is there with the deen of Allah. So I put down my thought over here that what have we done? Because we never understood the Quran after the first Islamic era, and we abandoned it. And in between, then we did not look at it as a system of deen. We thought that whatever system we inherited, the life is meant to be like that. And this is the point which we should keep it in mind, that deen is a system in which we will be declared as servants of Allah, as abuds of Allah, with amanu. And that is the bottom line. We should keep it in mind that we are striving for that. They need to earnestly work for the establishment of the system of Salat, as it is through this aim that the system of Rabubiyat will take place. We remember verse 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah. We have covered it in detail. And over there, Quran is pointing our attention towards this system. For this system, the first thing to understand is that as Mu'mineen, whatever they have acquired from the man-devised system needs to be made available for the establishment of the system of Salat. Because what we are getting is from the man-devised system, but we have related to Allah, because then it becomes our means of sustenance for establishing the system of deen. This should remain in the focus of these servants of Allah. They should make it part of their psyche 24/7. During this phase of approaching towards the system of deen, they should carry this out openly and secretly. Of course, there will be, according to the situation and environment, where they have to declare it and let others know, to encourage others to join in. And sometimes we have to do it quietly, confidentially, to keep in view the self-respect of others, as the situation demands. The bottom line is to remain aware and keep doing this, and never to give up. This is important, because the day we gave up, we are dead. Because the values of the Quran and divine attributes which we are manifesting have given us new life, and we covered it in our last presentation. And remember that the stay in the word is finite, and once the opportunity is lost, then it will not come back. And here one point is which we should keep it in mind all the time, is that if I could do something good today and I have delayed it by 2 days, that means those 2 days benefit I will not accrue. Myself will be deprived of those benefits. So that is an injustice against my own self. And Quran has pointed to this. It said that make an effort for that Jannat which is spread over the whole of the universe. By reminding Yawmullah Bayun Fihe Wala Khalal, the Quran has drawn attention to this word as well as of the hereafter. That on that day, if we have lost that opportunity and left this world with not doing enough for ourselves, then we have that all cost benefit analysis which we did, all the businesses which we did over here, if those were not directed in the path of Allah, then the results of that, outcomes of that will go wasted, because those will not become part of our that self which is required for the hereafter. In this world, the state of prevalent exploitation and slavery is before us. Muslims, despite possessing the book of Allah, abandoned it knowingly in order to follow their base desires. And as a consequence, there is the rule of batil everywhere. We should take certain responsibility as Muslims and the claimant of the followers of the Quran, that because of inadequacy, because of inefficiency and inattentiveness on our part, the word has landed in hell. And that is the responsibility we have to share. They find themselves held in very low esteem and are dependent on others both materially and intellectually. Death being a fact of life, we know we will not get another opportunity once we are in the next life. We need to compare the two differently defined human psyches before us and fully appreciate their differences and their potentials to create a different world. Now let us go to the next verse, 1432. All is made available to you as one whole mankind. Over here, Quran has said, Allahul ladhi khalaqa samawati wal arda wa anzala minas samai ma'an fa akhraja bihi minas samarati rizqan lakum wa sakhkhara lakumul fulka litajri fil bahri bi amrihi wa sakhkhara lakumul anhara. This is 1432. So the two verses are covered in this slide. Wa sakhkhara lakumul shamsa wal qamara daibani wa sakhkhara lakumul layla wan nahara. Because these were two interrelated verses, so I put them together. In this way, that system of Rabubiyat will become established in the human world, whose means and resources have been made available in the external world from the beginning. Allah created the highs and lows of the universe for this purpose. He sends down rain from clouds, through whose irrigation various kinds of fruit grow, so that these become a means of sustenance for you. He has subdued boats and ships for you, so that these can float around on the oceans according to his law, and has also subjugated rivers for you, so that you can make use of these for irrigation. And he has also tied the moon and the sun in the chains of laws. These are continuously going around in their orbits according to a defined procedure. Furthermore, he has also made the day and the night subject to you. Now, important thing over here is that Quran has very succinctly drawn our attention to the phenomena around us and said that everything is precisely planned for the arrival of human beings and for their survival, and then going through birth and death, and then moving on to the next stage of life. So there is nothing arbitrary here. There is nothing at random here. Now let us look at these verses with more reflections. The addressee of these verses is you. Just see, kum is used, I think, 5 times, i.e. whole of mankind, but this address is through the medium of mu'mineen, i.e. since we have understood this important aspect, hence our duty is to draw the attention of others. This means the guidance of the Quran needs us for its communication to others and its practical application. Now this looks like a difficult job, that why should I keep reminding others? But this is how the self develops. If we do not pass it on to others, then of course we are not developing ourselves. We are not fully conscious of the Quranic value system. So that is the basis for that. After drawing our attention to razaqnahum, that is again collectively, the rizq bestowed on us and having and asking us for a system of distribution, here Allah has turned to some aspects of the means of sustenance on the planet Earth. For example, the natural hydrological cycle essential for the distribution of water and for the growth of rizq. The rivers and their functioning, shipping for the distribution of goods, including rizq, etc. We need to refer to other verses related to this aspect in the Quran. Next is then our attention is drawn towards the functioning of the sun and the moon, which also contribute to this system of sustenance. For example, through providing light and the tides, creating seasons, creating time, day and night, pointing to the importance of work and rest, and not acquiring misery through 24/7 working. Now, I put it down because we have made our life very, very mechanical and like robots. And is it meant to be like this? We have to sit down and think that how much work is required to make life convenient for our physical self as well as for our own self, that is the inner nafs. And that is something which we should keep it in mind as and when the system of deen arrives in this world. Relate these verses to another verse from Surah Al-Baqarah. Allazi ja'alakumul arda firasham was samaa binam wa anzala minas samai ma'an fa akhraja bihi minas samarati rizqan lakum fala taj'alu lillahi andadam wa antum ta'lamun. There's so much covered in this verse that really we need a few more slides to explain it. Here the Quran has drawn our attention towards the carefully planned system on the earth itself, and then has mentioned the water system plus the system of rizq for you. So the word over here, which we should keep it in mind, is that it is addressing the whole of mankind, not one person, not one nationality, not one tribe, one family. It is whole of mankind. Why it is whole of mankind? Because it is working for whole of mankind. So whoever at the helm of affairs should think about it, that they are rebelling against the laws of Allah. And then has mentioned the water system plus the system of rizq for you, i.e. whole of mankind. Finally concluded by stating that do not create imbalance in the distribution of the produce you receive from the earth, i.e. associating others with Allah. When everything has been produced for the whole of mankind, then anyone out of that mankind, if accumulates or distributes it unjustly, then he or she is a rebel. He's a rebel against Allah and his system. And that is where the imbalances are created in the world. That if it is rizqan lakum, for everyone means of sustenance, because all of them possess an equal self, I. So if myself, my own I, is depriving others who are equal from their means of sustenance, that means I'm doing injustice. And Quran calls them zalimeen. And that is why it says, وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, that you knowingly do it. So let us not get into any kind of deception or any kind of illusion that these people do not know it. They exactly know it, that their policies are creating poverty in the world. In fact, they deliberately create poverty. If you remember, Quran has said in 85th verse in Surah Al-Baqarah that you first turn people out of their homes, then you do charitable deeds by releasing them, getting them released and helping them, whereas you shouldn't have turned them out of their homes in the first place. This is shirk, which is a severe crime based on evidence, because as a result of shirk, what happens is that we create gross injustice in the world, and as a result, we do gross injustice to our own individual self as well. We can witness this injustice by looking at the state of human poverty on the planet. Now, next verse 1434, which is the last verse for today's presentation. Not being fully aware of the signs of Allah, man is unjust to himself, fails to manifest his latent potentials. وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. In this way, according to his law of Rabubiyat, he has provided you with all that you need for your nourishment. This means of sustenance is so full of variety and abundance that if you start to count it, you will not be able to encompass it. We provided this means of sustenance for the universal nourishment of the whole of mankind, but by seizing possession of it, men began such interventions that each began to snatch the rights of the other, and whatever fell into anyone's hands, he kept it with him. And we can relate it to the world around us. It's all evidence-based. Few verses for further elaboration. Yasaluhu man fis samawati wal ardi kulla yawmin huwa fi shanin. This is a verse from Surah Rahman. Also reflect on this, that everything of the universe, including human beings, is dependent on the Rabubiyat of Allah. And the requirements of their Rabubiyat keep changing in every era. We know it that the conveniences keep changing as we progress forward. When people traveled around on the back of animals, their situation was different as of today, where we have different means of transport. Not only in every era, but even in different circumstances and during various phases, the requirements of nourishment of everything are different. We seldom pay attention to this, but when I was going through this verse, I looked at it, and there is so much facts, so much reality is hidden in this verse that it is amazing how Quran has summed it up in just one verse. The system of Rabubiyat of Allah is such that everything keeps getting means of sustenance according to its state. So important for us as well, those who are the students of the Quran, that we keep thinking that how things can get better and what are the needs of human self at every stage. For example, the education system under the system of Deen will have to meet the requirements of self-development as children progress through schools, universities, colleges, and as through the practical side of their life later on, and including the married life. So these are the things which we should keep it in mind and keep thinking on them. And there is a lot of research required on this aspect. Ya ayyuhan nasu antumul fuqara'u ilallahi wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. O mankind, you are dependent on Allah for every breath of yours for your nourishment and life, but Allah is not dependent on you. It's important over here that this is not something which Allah is trying to impress us with. The whole point is that as mu'mineen, as the bearers of the system of deen and thinkers, we have to think about it that this system should be self-sustaining. It should be so self-sustaining that people should know their duties and responsibilities and know the responsibility of developing their own self, and they know the higher purpose of their life. And as a result, that system will become so self-sustaining that it will require minimum interference from outside. The system of the universe is continuing to function without any help on its own in a balanced and organized way. And this happens even in we may have seen that even in our families, if children are well trained and educated and everyone knows his job and is fully aware of the law of requital, we don't have to keep a tag on them. They will do their job very conscientiously and dutifully, and will be of minimum hassle for their parents. And if it can be done at that micro scale, it is not difficult to see it working at a macro scale. And it produces such an outcome by witnessing which words of appreciation and acknowledgement arise spontaneously on the lips of all. World resources cannot be depleted. These meet the needs of whole of mankind for all times. Distribution is the main issue. Now over here I've quoted verses which I thought related to what this verse of Surah Ibraheem. وَعَدَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ جَنَّةٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَاتٍ فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ وَرِضْوَانٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And fawz over here means whatever efforts we make on the path of Allah, these are bound to produce results. And if we relate it to Wa'adallahu al-mu'minina wal-mu'minati, it gives us the complete gist. لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ لَهُم مَّا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. These are those mu'mineen and mu'minat for whom are eternal bounties with which they will continue to benefit. Gardens under which rivers flow to dwell therein, and beautiful mansions. Another thing greater than all this is harmony with divine attributes. That is the real purpose for which they used to survive. The achievement of this aim is the real success, and what a supreme feat this is, due to which their self will be enabled to traverse further evolutionary stages of life. And we have already seen that how big change has occurred within our own self, the things which we couldn't see previously. And we can look around people who haven't come to the Quran, how narrowly focused they are in their life. Their vision is very myopic. I'm not trying to put them down, but this is the way system functions. That Allah may reward them according to the best of their deeds and add even more from His fadl. For Allah does provide according to His law of Mashiach far more than they expect. And because once we start working on this, then once our needs are reduced, means of sustenance are ample, then we will have surplus means of sustenance if we really distribute it across the world on the whole of mankind. So issue of distribution is the one on which we should be concentrating. What are the issues related to distribution, and why don't we distribute in a balanced way and in a just way? And it is very obvious that people, unless come to the Quran, they can't do it, because there is nothing in them to do it. For them in this Jannah, there will be all that which they desire. Rather, there will be far more than their desires. Human desires are according to the existing level of consciousness. Allah knows the requirements of the hereafter for further progression. What is the level of desires? If we look at the desires which as finite beings who think that the life will end with death, what are their desires? Their desires will all revolve around the physical existence, and the hereafter doesn't come into it. And once we bring the hereafter of the Quran into it, we will see that the horizon of our desires also starts expanding. 1434, for our self-development, we need to understand the concept of Rabubiyat. By addressing the whole of mankind as you, the Quran has drawn our attention towards the needs of ourselves as well as our physical needs. For physical needs, everything is made available in the world. However, its distribution is kept in human hands, and this is where the Quran invites us to think hard and not allow our greed to resort to injustice. So greed is there. We have to overcome it. First, we have to recognize it and then overcome it, and not allow our greed to resort to injustice in its distribution. The produce of the earth is meant for the whole of mankind. So this is the bottom line which we have to keep it in mind all the time as mu'mineen who have come to the Quran. The produce of the earth is meant for the whole of mankind, not for one individual or one nation or one tribe or one family or one community, and must remain freely available for all, of course, through a system based on the permanent values. In order to meet the needs of the self-development, the management of the means of the sustenance based on the permanent values through the manifestation of divine attributes is within the reach of mankind. And this is an achievable target. It is not something otherworldly that it cannot be done and should be left for the hereafter. However, understanding the system of Rabubiyat and its basis is a prerequisite for this, and this is noted in the Quran. With respect to the needs of the self, we need to bear in mind that while the needs of the physical body are limited and finite, and we know it, we can easily count them. We can take a piece of paper and write down what are my needs in order to live this life till the time I die. The needs of the self continue through various stages of development in this life, and being eternal, these will keep arising and manifesting in the life of the hereafter also. Path of the Quran is a path of hope, is a path of accomplishing our desires optimally and then having more of those desires, because life is not going to end with our death. It is going to go on forever and ever on Salat al-Mustaqim. And for such a life, we should just sit down and imagine and think that how much attention has been given in the Quran to this aspect again and again, and it's all based on evidence. For this, Allah has drawn our attention by saying that He does not need anything from us. He is an infinite self, but the way in which we are created, we need His self as a model for the development of ourselves. So wherever Allah has called Himself Ghaniul Hamid, He is drawing our attention to a higher level of life. That is the life which we can create right here and come out of fear and huzn, and then move on to the next one. Now, finally, what I've done is I've taken some quotes again from that book which I finished, The Rape of Mind, and I thought these are quite interesting. The first one is, the true purpose of psychology, and especially of its mental health branch, is to free man from his internal tensions by helping him to understand what causes them. Psychology seeks to liberate the human spirit from its dependency on immature thinking so that each man can realize his own potentialities. It seeks to help man to face reality with its many problems and to recognize his own limitations as well as possibilities for growth. It is dedicated to the development of mature individuals who are capable of living in freedom and voluntarily restricting their freedom when it is indicated for the larger good. Very important. And voluntarily restricting their freedom when it is indicated for the larger good. It is based on the premise that when man understands himself, he can begin to be the master of his own life, rather than merely be puppet of either his own unconscious drives or of a tyrant with a perverted lust for power. A very powerful paragraph, and in which he has succinctly summarized the purpose of psychology. And if we replace this, the true purpose of psychology, which is given in the Quran, we will see there is a lot over here which even human mind has been able to conclude through his own observations and through own education and training. The next one is, freedom and respect for the individual are rooted in the Old Testament, which convinced man that he makes his own history, that he is responsible for his history. So very straightforward that human beings are responsible for what they do in this life. Such freedom implies that a man throws off his inertia, that is something which is keeping him back through his own self. If I say that I cannot do it, be rest assured I will not be able to do it. So such freedom implies that a man throws off his own inertia. So he has to make himself free from his own inertia, from his own inner problems, that he does not cling arbitrarily to tradition, that he strives for knowledge and accepts moral responsibility. And this is a beautiful sentence: the fear of freedom is the fear of assuming responsibility. And that is the problem. Iblis did not want to own his responsibility, and that is why he became hopeless. And this is something which we have to keep it in mind, that freedom means the freedom which the Quran is putting before us. We have to take and assume responsibilities which Allah has taken on himself, and he wants us to deliver them with his help. And the last one is, systematic education toward freedom is possible. Freedom grows as the control over destructive inner drives become internalized. That is, when we understand those things which are making us slaves, which are taking away our own freedom through our own hands, and no longer depend on control from the outside, on control by parents and authorities. So we should think that what is keeping us backward, what is slowing us down, what is enslaving us, and then try to address those issues. And Quran helps us with that. And this is from Rape of Mind by J. Nehru. And with that, I come to the end of this presentation, and thanks for your time.